that anticipation of waiting and watching that line swing, and then when you can feel the fly kind of bouncing on the rocks is a really cool thing, because at that point you're like, it's about to happen.
Yeah, dude, that's what it's all about. That's why fishing is so fun, is because there's a lot of moments where you're not killing it and not doing great, but the stars just align sometimes, and you get that perfect cast, you get that perfect swing, and the fish happen to be there, and they happen to see your fly. You just got to pay your dues, and the stars will align, and things will happen.
Guys, welcome back to another podcast episode here. I'm here with my boy Will Phelps, as you guys probably know, and we are in the middle of nowhere, Alberta, Canada.
That's right. We're in Canadian land. This place is pretty sweet, dude. I'm glad to be up here with you. We're sitting next to this beautiful trout stream that I've been up to a few times, and I'm really happy to be sharing with Scotty. And yeah, I think we're going to dive into this trip that we've been on for the last few days, and kind of culminating up to this point, and kind of tell a little bit of the backstory that you're not going to see in our videos.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a grind the last couple days, and we're pretty beat. I know last night when we were sitting at camp, just kind of reflecting on the whole week, we were just like, wow. We talked about fishing this morning, and we're like, you know what? Let's just sit around the fire and podcast.
We're pretty tired. The legs are hurting. We've taken some spills, and I'm sore. I know my puppy is right here about to fall asleep, which is not normal. She's been running around like crazy. We've been running around like crazy. It's like it's time to return to the real world, and yeah, I guess we'll share our thoughts on that. But
it's always a weird feeling, or a weird kind of situation going back into the real world. We've been out here for 4 or 5 days now, and living out of the van, and just like we're gonna re-enter and just back to reality for a little.
Yeah, it's a crazy feeling when you spend so much time on the river in a row, 5 days in a row, just not really connected to society in any sort of way. I'm not looking at my phone. I know you're not really looking at your phone, and we don't have service. And Scotty's phone took a little damage, so
took a little swim.
It's good though. Those things are good, and when you're forced to take a break from your normal day-to-day life, and then re-entering, it's almost like a little bit of culture shock going back home and going across the border, and it's definitely a different lifestyle. And yeah, look forward to going home and looking through some of this awesome footage we got for you guys over the last few days, though. That's something I'm definitely looking forward to. It's like opening Christmas presents.
It is, dude. It's like there's certain times when the filming can slow you down and can kind of be in the way of things, but like it's so worth it, because one, it's just so fun to capture stuff, and especially when you and I get together and do these trips, it's so fun because we both get it. We know what we're doing. Kind of know what we're doing.
Kind of.
But yeah, then you come back and you have all this footage. You get to like relive these moments and then piece it together into a story. And this time's going to be a little different, because over the last 2-3 years now, we've gotten together in the summer and worked on a project and filmed some stuff, and just honestly, it's been July every single time.
Yeah, it's always July.
Which is crazy.
It's good. It's our month. It's the best month of the year to be fishing, man.
Best month, man. But yeah, so you're going to be putting together a video, and then I'm going to be putting together a video this time, which I think will be pretty interesting to see, like how it's the same trip, same story, but it'll be interesting how they're pieced together differently.
Different perspectives. And I think it'll be cool because like we can each tell the same story from our own perspective, and there will be differences, there will be similarities, but in the end, it's really just a fishing trip. We've done some big films together. We've worked on really big projects. We've spent, literally years, like the Bike Pack, on planning and executing and editing the whole thing. And this, we're like, a couple weeks ago, I was like, let's just go fish. Let's just go fish, man. Like, it's hard to leave the camera behind for both of us, so naturally we had to film it. Like, it's like that just comes with any big fishing trip I do these days. It's hard not to document it because these experiences are so exciting to me and so fun, and they make such an impact on my life that to have that memory to look back on, and also to be there behind the lens and document it, it forces you to really observe what's happening. And really, you get a better understanding of fisheries by, using a camera, I think, and observing how the fish behave, observing the river, observing the little nuances through the lens. And that's an experience you don't get unless you have a camera. So for me, it kind of goes hand in hand with fishing is documenting the whole process, whether it's just taking a couple photos or it's making a whole video out of it, like what we're doing. So that's cool because this trip, we're bringing our cameras along, but we're not obviously making a massive film out of this. This isn't like a huge ordeal. It's really just a fishing trip that we're just, we're bringing the cameras, we're using our GoPros, and we're just documenting it for fun. And and that's really the bottom line. We're just having a good time with it.
Yeah, I think for the last couple years, every trip that I go on, I almost try to attach so much significance to the story and to the trip from a storytelling standpoint. Like, what's the significance of this? What does this mean? What does that mean? And like trying to tie it all into this like big film. But I think the goal of this trip was like, let's just go have a fun bros trip in the mountains. Let's just go up to Canada, take the new whip, which we'll get into in a sec, and just kind of experience it. Because I think there's lots and lots of people out there that do the same thing that we do and want to do the same thing as we do, which is just going out and fishing small creeks, big creeks, whatever it is, and just we happen to document it, And so it's like we don't need to tie a ton of significance to some of the trips that we go on. It's just like, just go have an adventure. And that was the adventure. You know?
Exactly. It doesn't have to be this huge deal. Anyone can do this. And that's the bottom line is we're just two dudes with cameras. I mean, it's really nothing special. Anyone can buy a camera and go fishing and buy a fishing license. It's like, that's all we're doing.
Yeah.
Like whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, it's sick. So this trip came about, like we said, a little last minute, and it was a little different as well this time because we got a new whip that we've been taking, a new vehicle to trout. Tell me a little bit about how that came about and what's sitting behind us right here.
So as y'all can probably see in the frame is the front end of my Ford E350 van. It's a V10. It's got a 1-ton chassis. It's a beast. And my good friend Bridger, he has one of these vans. He has the shorter version. This one's the longer version, a little bit of an extended rear end. And I went camping with him in his van last fall. We went rock climbing near Missoula. And we got rained out. We were on a multi-pitch route, and we had to bail about 3 pitches up and go back to his van. And we sat in there while it was pouring rain. And I was like, damn, if we were tent camping, this would really suck right now because it was cold. It was in the fall. It wasn't a warm rain. And we were sitting in there, and I was looking around. I was like, wow, I need one of these things. Like, this is what it's all about. Like, because this enables you to go on adventures for an extended period of time and be comfortable and have a living space similar to like a mini home that requires no setup. And even though my van right now is very bare bones, all I've done is put a bed in it. It's basically raw on the inside, just like insulation and material that doesn't look pretty. But at the same time, it's functional. All it is an enclosed space, just like a tent, but on wheels. And to me, that idea really like drew me in. I really wanted something that A, could be a living space, but B, get me to where I wanted to go. Like I've had my Tacoma for 7 years now, and it's really hard to give up the off-road ability of that vehicle. Even though it's not as comfortable to camp in, I have the Tepui tent set up, it's able to get me to where I want to go. And that is a limiting factor with a lot of vans and RVs is they don't have off-road capabilities. But this particular model, after some modifications, can be a very capable off-road vehicle and has enough power that I can tow my snowmobiles, I can tow the drift boat. It's basically a do-it-all vehicle. And it's in the early stages right now. As you can see, it's not built out. There's no four-wheel drive system yet, which is to come. We have a lot to do with this van. I haven't had time to do anything this summer because I've just been taking advantage of having the van and taking it fishing as is. And it's been very functional as is. But I need to really buckle down here soon and start the build, which I'm going to document, and you should check out my channel if you haven't. And
please go subscribe to Will's channel if you haven't already. I'm sure most of you guys are, but Phelps on the Fly on YouTube, you can see the whole van build. I'm excited to see it because I think I think this van and like where you're located is like has so much potential, and especially with your channel, it'd be really cool to see just like the weekend trips you take, and then maybe some bigger trips up to Canada or wherever. Should be rad.
That's the goal, man. Once this thing's built out, I want to go on some really long trips. Like right now, we're kind of getting to the point after 3 or 4 days where we're running out of resources. Our batteries are dying. We're running out of water. Like I definitely need to install the proper systems for a long-term ordeal in this van, and that's to come. And that's really my limiting factor right now is no electrical system, no sink kitchen setup with water and all that sort of stuff. So once that's in, we're going to be going on some big trips, and hell, maybe I'll sell my house and just live in this thing. Actually, that's not going to happen.
Not yet.
Weekend warrior still.
No, that's awesome, man. Well, yeah, I was really excited to have that. It obviously played a huge role in this trip in getting us from spot to spot, being a spot for us to go to for lunch, to eat, and get out of the sun for a little bit, and then also for sleeping each night. But let's start back. Day one, I got into Whitefish. We linked up, packed up the van, got everything ready to go, and hit the road up to Canada.
Yeah, dude. That's one of my favorite parts of any trip is just meeting up, and just that stoke is just brewing. We're just so giddy to get up here. And, man, like, when I picked you up at the airport, I was so excited because I haven't been up here and fished some of these rivers that I know you knew about. And there's some rivers like this one that I knew about. So we're basically trading spots. And I was really excited to see what was in store because I know you've had some successful trips up here, and so have I. And it's really cool to be able to go on a trip like that where we each kind of know a different spot in a similar area, and we get to share different spots with each other that we haven't fished before.
Yeah, dude, I hadn't been back to Canada. I've only been once, but I hadn't been back to Canada since 2019 with my boys Adam and Steve. First time I ever came up here. And yeah, we had an incredible bull trout cutthroat trip that just blew my mind, especially I didn't even live out west at that point. So I was like, this place is not real. What is this place? So I've been itching to come up here for years now, and COVID obviously hit, and so there was a lot of issues with getting over the border over the last couple years, but dude, the stars aligned, and we were able to come out here. We had I guess we had a couple rivers pinned that we were thinking about fishing in different provinces, BC and Alberta. And there was a lot of options, but we kind of just had to get up here and figure it out.
And that's what happened, man. We had plans to fish a number of things, and a number of those that we never even touched. And it just kind of came to fruition. Like when we went out to the second river we fished, like we didn't plan on spending another day there, but it was just so good we had to call an audible and do it. And that's the beauty of just going on a fishing trip with your bro and not having any set plan or script for a film or anything like that. Is you can just kind of freeball it and do whatever, and that's what we did. And that's the beauty of just summer fly fishing. That's what brought me out west initially, was just living out of my truck and just going from place to place, following the hatches, hearing what's good, and then just going over and checking it out. And you just go exploring, and you don't have a schedule. It leaves options open that you wouldn't otherwise know that they even were options until you're out there experiencing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a beauty in just leaving some flexibility in your schedule, and it's easy to have too much of a plan and be too fixated on, okay, day one we're doing this, day two we're doing this, etc. But I think we left a little wiggle room for that exact thing to happen. It's like, let's go check these streams out and kind of follow what's hot, And instead, I feel like too, a lot of times planning out too many streams is a downfall, because you try to fish too many pieces of water when you should actually just focus in on a couple. And really get those dialed in.
Yeah, it takes time to really dial in a stream, and especially with technical rivers. These rivers where we've been fishing for native fish are typically less technical than, say, like a brown trout spring creek. And, I've been places where it takes a week to catch a trout.
Yeah.
And a lot of it does come down to my angling skills.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it takes a little bit of development to dial it in. And when you're up here, especially in a different country, and you don't get to spend much time here, it's really hard to get to a place and just immediately start like catching fish. And luckily for us, like we kind of did that.
It usually doesn't happen for us.
Yeah, but that enabled us to fish 3 different rivers in 4 days, because after a day or 2 on each river, we're like, wow, I'm good on that. Like that's what we came here to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that allowed us to have a little bit of freedom. But sometimes you get to a river and day 1 is just a complete bust. But sometimes it's not necessarily the fishery that's a bust. You just got to figure it out, and it takes a couple of days.
Yeah, there's so many factors that go into it. But let's start at like day 1. We rolled into BC. Run us through kind of the program that day, getting our permits, all the regulations, and what that looked like for us.
Yeah, that's one thing that has kind of held me back from going to BC's. Like, the permitting system is a little bit more challenging than Alberta. In BC, you have to get your provincial license, first of all, which is basically like, say I live in Montana, your Montana fishing license, just for the state or the province. And then your classified waters permit is a separate permit that you have to get on top of your provincial license. And that is for the specific river that you're going to fish. And every day you need a different permit for each river. So say you want to go fish, one river, and you're on that river that day, and it's really good, and you have your provincial license and your classified waters license, and you want to fish that river the next day, you have to go into the shop or go online and get another permit for the next day. So if you're out in the woods and you don't have service and you want to change rivers, well, you're out of luck. You have to go back into service and get your permit online or go to a fly shop. And first of all, I would recommend anyone going to BC for the very first time, go to a fly shop before you just go online and buy your permit. We were able to get our online permits after kind of going through the process and understanding it for the next day. But to get a good understanding of the permitting system, I would totally recommend going to a shop, talk to someone that knows something about it, or talk to a local, get some knowledge from someone that knows what they're talking about, because you don't want to make mistakes. I know a lot of people have made mistakes coming over the border and fishing.
I've made mistakes like last time, 100%. Yeah. So like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's easy. It's easy to do, and you want to pay attention to the regulations, because obviously it's not in anyone's best interest to be breaking the rules or getting any sort of fine. It's just not fun. You don't want to deal with that, and also it's better for the fisheries to respect the local regulations and go about it that way. So after we got our permits for fishing in BC, we went out and fished our first day on the Beep River.
Brought out the drift boat.
And that was really cool, fishing with the drift boat in Canada for the first time. I've never brought my boat up here, and I've always wanted to. So that was really fun to get that thing wet and just do some really casual cutthroat fishing from the boat, and brought the dog along. And fishing from a boat's always a little more casual than walk wading. It was nice to start out easy. Mm-hmm. Just row down a beautiful river, pretty close to the road too. We're not like crazy in the wilderness or anything, and we experienced some really good cutthroat fishing. And of course, we had some storms rolling in. And I know Scotty could fill us in on that a little bit.
Yeah, it wasn't the chill float the whole way that we thought. Yeah, dude, I really liked having the float day on the front end, just because it wasn't a ton of pressure to like catch a bunch of fish or get a bunch of footage. It was like just you and I, and we ran the GoPros and like just had a fun time cutthroat fishing. And then about midway through the day, we start seeing some clouds roll in, and we're like, ooh, it's getting like streamery weather. And out of nowhere, these clouds roll in, it starts raining on us, and then freaking hail came in out of, like, it felt like out of nowhere. And that was the hardest hail I've ever experienced, in one of the gnarliest storms that I've ever like been outside for with no shelter. It was insane.
It hit us so hard. You could see the wall coming at us from a distance. We looked up, we were like, okay, there's something coming, because the mountains just disappeared.
Yeah.
You were looking up the mountains, and 1 second they're there, and the next they were gone. And then it was one thing that was crazy about that storm to me was just looking at the water and how much hail was coming down and splashing the water. And it looked like a waterfall just like spraying up everywhere, because normal raindrops, when they hit the water, They trickle. They make a little splash, and it's cute. But then the hail coming down and these like hard balls of ice, it was splashing the water like feet up from the water surface. That was insane to see. I'd never seen that before in my life.
I remember going because I had the GoPro in my head and I was running it. And I remember I was like looking down and I saw the clouds. I was like, that's not going to hit us. And then we're fishing the opposite side, so I'm not looking. And I remember at first, we're like, oh, it's hailing. And it was kind of like, oh my God, this is crazy, laughing, to like panic, like actual panic. When I started hearing you being like, holy shit, we got to get to the bank, we got to get shelter. And then it just kept coming in. I was like, it hurt, first of all, hurt really bad on my hands and everywhere. And I mean, if you guys watch the video, you can see how nasty it was. But
it was like getting shot with a paintball gun.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
It felt like we were just getting shot with a paintball gun over and over and over. And I tried to use my net as cover, which didn't work. I just ended up just putting it on my head. Just had a basket over my head. And then when we got out of the boat to run to shore, I saw Tally's dog bed in the back. So I grabbed that, and it's like basically a mini trampoline kind of thing. So it deflected. We used that as a shield and put it over our heads and just tucked into the bushes. And we were just sitting there just like in awe of what was happening. It was full on panic for sure. It was crazy. It was just all hell broke loose. We couldn't go to one bank because there were houses there, so we only had one other bank that we could go to. And they didn't have any trees, just a bunch of bushes.
Yeah, of course.
It was kind of wild.
It was really cool though. I remember us just sitting under that dog bed and waiting for it to end, just being like, well, shit.
We're stuck here.
Here we are. Yeah, unfortunately I lost my film camera died after that float. It got a little wet, and she's a goner now. And then didn't get to use the film camera the rest of the trip, which is a bummer.
Yeah.
But oh well.
It's all right. We got to focus on making our films, and that's kind of a good thing sometimes, is thinning out your camera gear.
Which was a huge theme of this trip, I thought. That's something I've been really working on this summer, is just like simplifying everything down to the max, or the min, I should say, to the core essentials of what I actually need. And like, if we're gonna go out and shoot dry fly eats, like, okay, we are shooting dry fly tight shots. Let's not try to switch lenses a bunch of times. And I felt like we were really good about whatever you were using, I was bringing something else. Or if, I had the drone, or, you carried the GoPro or the tight lens. It was just like a good balance, and especially with all the hiking we ended up doing.
Yeah, for sure. It's really good to just focus on one thing at a time. And like, again, that came back to our initial theme of the trip, is like we wanted to fish all these rivers, but it's good to just focus on a few.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to spread yourself thin when you're out fly fishing. When you don't like, it's a place to be when you're standing in a river, in a place of peace and serenity. And when you have a bunch of stuff running through your mind and you're juggling all this gear, it kind of takes away from it. So I'd try and bring gear that doesn't detract from the situation and adds to it. Mm-hmm. And when you just bring one lens and one camera, then you can focus on one thing, and you're not juggling all this stuff. And, it goes back to the simplifying. And even though my C70 long lens rig isn't necessarily simple,
yeah,
what we were doing was simple. It was just trying to capture a fish coming up and eating a dry fly, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and even the fishing gear was slimmed down. Obviously the boat day we got to bring whatever, but
yeah.
In terms of the wade days, we wanted to be light. We wanted to, we just brought a cup essentially of some streamers and some tippet, and that was it.
Yeah, you really need 3 streamers, and that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll get destroyed, and that's why you want backups, but you want a heavy one, you want a light one, and then you want a really heavy one.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
The rat. Yeah, so dude, we wrapped up that first float that day, and it was crazy. After that hailstorm hit us, I remember just how cold it was. We could see our breath. Remember, it was hot. I was wearing a short sleeve shirt.
It was hot. Earlier that day, I was sweating. We were talking about jumping in the river. I was like, dang, I was rowing down the river just sweating. And it went from being 90s to 40s.
Yeah.
Just like that.
So quick. And these clouds moved in. I remember you and I kind of both looked at each other like, it's streamer time. Let's throw, we've got some cut there. Let's throw the streamer. And we ran the streamer, missed. Had a couple bullies come out and eat it, which was cool. We were just fishing it uh, like we would for brown trout, just along the bank, hitting structure and like pulling it out. Because most of the streamer fishing we thought we were going to do was just swinging.
Mhm.
And we knew we had to cover some ground with the boat. So we just started rowing and fishing it. And, dude, that got me really excited. Getting a couple eats on the streamer until we finally ended up sticking one, which was epic.
That was epic, especially after the rainstorm and everything, and seeing all the eats. And it was definitely a build up to that fish. And yeah, seeing you stick that thing and just being on the oars that got us stoked. That was a great way to cap off an already awesome day of fly fishing.
Mm-hmm. You stuck one too.
It was
a little
stuck
guy.
one.
Yeah.
You also caught one on the dry.
I did, dude. First bully of the trip.
Yeah, first bully of the trip was on a dry fly. Which
On a
was
little
sweet.
dry fly.
Yeah.
So we wrapped up our float day, and good way we got into a bully, so that was a good sign. And decided to move on to the next river that we were going to fish. So we took the van and found a camp spot, which was sweet. Big shout out to Onyx for helping us this whole trip and just getting us to place and finding campsites and knowing what's public and private. That was a huge help for us. But then, we got to wake up the next morning to a gloomy, rainy morning. And this was the day.
It was the day. That was the peak of our adventure, in my opinion. I love pulling into a campsite in the dark and not really knowing what's around you, and then you wake up and you just feel like you're in BC. You're like, wow, this is what I came here for. And then just seeing the gloomy weather and that sort of thing just got us even more stoked.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, man, that was a good way to wake up, get down on the river, and we kind of had a little adventure down to the river. Like the river we were fishing that morning, for the next couple of days had some really tough access. And a lot of these rivers in Canada have deep canyons almost that you have to hike down to access the rivers, which I personally enjoy, and I know Scotty really enjoys the athletic side of the fly fishing.
Little
here.
sufferfest.
The little sufferfest. It's part of the deal, and we could talk a little bit about the fishing. What are you thinking?
Yeah. Oh, I should first say too, one of the things that, and this was like a mistake that we had made the first day last time I came, was we weren't fully within grips of the regulations for flies and fishing and everything. And so in BC, you can only fish one fly barbless. So you can't fish a dry drop, can't fish a double dry. You can fish an articulated streamer, but it can't have two hooks. So that was something that we made sure, plan ahead going into this. And whether it was tying flies with one hook or just clipping off the back hook, we had to do that. And as we found, bullies are predatory fish, which we all know. And they will go for the kill. So they're going to eat the head. So a lot of times we'll just keep the top hook instead of the back one. But yeah, dude, we got that first day when we got down there, it was super cloudy. And I remember rolling up to the river and it just being super silty.
Yeah.
I
was thrown off by it. At first, when we looked at it, I was thinking, dang, I don't know what to think about this. Sometimes it's good for streamers, but sometimes it's not good. I've fished silty rivers, and it's been terrible fishing, but I've also fished silty rivers, and it's been good fishing. And I know bull trout in particular don't like silty water. It's not good for them. So I didn't know what to think about it. And, I was questioning the whole situation, but I was like, we're going to fish it anyways and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And of course it didn't take long before we knew what things were like on that river that day. And I was just swinging, made my first or second swing. And I hear Scotty yelling from below me.
Yeah, dude, it was crazy. It was a big, long tail out run, just perfect streamer hole, especially for swinging. You were running the spay rod and swinging, and I was just running the 8-weight single hand with a streamer. And so I just told you to go up top and kind of work your way down, and I went and fished the tail out. and it wasn't but like 3 casts in, and I'm just stripping the fly back, not even swinging it, just stripping it back, boom, like such an aggressive eat, and we were on. Dude, it's just like one of those things. I feel like I've been on so many fishing trips where it takes so long to catch a fish, or it's like such a grind to catch a fish. So to catch one that early on in the day was really, really exciting, and just a huge weight off the shoulders, you know?
Yeah.
A huge confidence booster of like, we're doing the right things. We got into something already. It wasn't gonna be like that the entire trip,
No.
but we at least got on the board pretty soon, which was epic.
Yeah, sometimes it's a bad spell when you catch a fish right off the bat. I mean, everyone who's probably watching this knows if you catch one at the very beginning of the trip, sometimes you don't catch anything for the rest of the trip. It's just what happens sometimes. But it wasn't the case this time around, thankfully, because you caught another fish right afterwards. Like, what was it, like 2 casts afterwards or something?
Yeah.
It's like I heard her yelling again. I was like, all right, I'm not going to get on there with the camera again. We just got another shot. I'm going to keep fishing because I need to catch up to Scotty. He's already got 3. I got 0.
Dude, I couldn't believe it. 2 back-to-back to start it off, and that tail out was really exciting. And just felt good to have a strong pull on the end of the rod, to really make that 8 weight feel like a 5. I mean, in my opinion, I've caught smallmouth, and they pull harder than most freshwater fish, but I think the bull trout, the eat, and the fight is probably the best freshwater fish that I've caught up to this point, or the hardest fighting freshwater fish that I've caught, I would say.
They're spunky. These fish in particular were just very healthy and very spunky. They just dog you, and they don't jump. That's one thing about bull trout that's interesting, is they don't jump like a rainbow trout or a brown trout would when they're on the end of your line. They'll just dog you, and they're a different sort of beast, without a doubt.
They just kind of dig.
They do. They dig.
Yeah. So obviously big fan of bull trout, but those two right away were great. And then the sun peaked out, and I kind of separated from you. I just went downstream. I just kind of kept working and seeing what's going on. And tell me about like the spay and that first morning for you on your end.
Yeah, so I'm a very novice spay angler. I'm new to it. I got that spay rod probably 5 years ago, and for the first couple of years, like when I first got it, I was really excited on it. It was a new form of fly fishing, and just, anytime you get a new rod, you want to fish it. And I realized how hard it was, so I put it away for a while and just didn't really put the time in necessary to learn how to do it, to cast it well, and I didn't really know much about it. I didn't have a teacher. No one could teach me. I just didn't know anyone that did it to like learn how to actually spay fish. I would go on the internet and watch videos, but after filming with some other folks over the last few years that are really, really advanced spay anglers, like Kevin Feenstra, and who else? Probably gonna have to cut
was
here.
it Whitney Gould?
Yeah, Whitney Gould.
Yeah,
she is one of the best spay casters in the entire world. I think she holds records for spay casting, and I filmed a trout spay class with her for Anchored Outdoors, which y'all should go check out if you're interested in learning how to cast a spay rod. There's a lot of good stuff on Anchored Outdoors. But yeah, after fishing with them, it really re-sparked that spay interest for me on my end, because I learned how effective it can actually be as a way to target not only salmon and steelhead, but also trout species, and of course bull trout. And I didn't really know of many people targeting bull trout on spay, but they just seem like the perfect species to fish for, especially living here. We don't have salmon and steelhead in Montana. I mean, we have kokanee, which are, landlocked salmon. But anyways, with the spay rod, it's a really effective way of covering water wade fishing with streamers. Because if anyone's wade fished with an 8 weight and a sinking line like Scotty was doing this week, it can be a pain in the butt. When you don't have room to backcast, it's really hard. It's also really hard to control the depth of your fly without stripping it. You have to strip your fly sometimes because you can't change your tips as easily as you do on a spay rod. And that's a thing that took me a really long time to figure out, was like how important it is to change your weight of your fly and your tip weight. There's all these different tips you can use to control the depth of your swing, because your swing is always essentially going to be at about the same speed based on the river you're fishing and the speed of the water. So you have to dial in your tip weight and your fly weight to match the speed of the river to achieve the depth you want with your fly. And you're not stripping it, so it's all based on the swing. And with a single hand rod, you're stripping it, and you can strip faster to fish your fly shallower, or you can not strip it at all to let it sink and go deeper. So you can really effectively control where your fly is in the water column spay fishing when you're swinging. And not only that, but by spay casting and making a cast, swinging your fly, step down. Make a cast, swing your fly, step down. You're basically sweeping the whole run, and you get to present your fly numerous times in a methodical method, in a methodical manner to the fish, that you're really covering that water well.
Mm-hmm.
And with these bigger rivers like we were fishing a couple of days ago, it's really hard to cover that water super well with a single hand rod. And not only is it a challenge to cast, it's physically challenging casting that 8-weight with your single hand rod, back casting and false casting over and over all day long with an 8-weight in a sinking line. Like, that's hard. But with a spay rod, it's really just one motion that you repeat over and over with your two-hander, and it takes a lot of the pain off your shoulders by just doing a simple spay cast. It is a little more challenging with these big flies we've been fishing. It's hard to actually get the fly out there sometimes, especially when you have a weighted fly. The rods I fish aren't quite big enough for the flies. I need to get probably an 8 or a 9-weight spay rod to effectively fish the flies we're using. But for our purposes, like, I can get away with the 6-weight and even the 4-weight trout spay. I caught a fish on that too. But I really recommend anyone out there who's wanting to streamer fish from the bank, not from a boat. Spay fishing is a great way to do it. Just on foot for any river, really. Not these small rivers like we were just fishing yesterday for cutties, but some of these bigger rivers with these long, deep runs. It's a really effective way of covering water with streamers, and it takes time to learn. There's definitely a learning curve involved, but there's a lot of resources out there to learn and seek out some knowledge from your friends. And it's just a fun way to fish. It's a different way to fish. It'll take you out of your comfort zone, and it's just like golfing. If anyone out there likes golf spay fishing, doing a spay cast is like a golf swing. Sometimes you hit it right down the fairway, and you're teed up perfectly for the green. And other times you take that swing and it ends up in your neighbor's window. So you'll experience that spay fishing, but that's part of the fun, because it's not only the actual catching of the fish and the fish part of spay fishing that's fun. It's just dialing in your cast and just kind of just getting lost in being in the moment and just making those casts and trying to perfect it. And then eventually your rod gets bent.
Yeah.
And that's just takes the fun to the next level.
Which happened on that first morning for you, right? You made a little adjustment. And,
I did. It was all about the tip. It all comes down to the tip adjustment and the fly weight, because that first hole that we were fishing, Scotty caught 2 fish right off the bat. And I was like, dang, I'm not catching them. What's going on? And I swung my fly right through the same spot. I got like a couple little bumps. And all it took was a change. I changed from a T8, which is on the lighter side of a sink tip, to a T14 tip, a 5-foot section of float, 5-foot section of T14 on that tip, and had a heavy weighted fly. And that seemed to be the ticket, because as soon as I switched tips, it was like 2 or 3 casts and boom.
Yeah.
Got my first fish.
Yeah. And it was cool because we shout out to our boys Connor and Dylan, who I met a couple years ago through Golden Fly Shop. But we stopped by their place on the way out of town just to talk to them, because they've been bull trout fishing a little bit, and they were just talking about how they've been bumping. You want to like feel your fly bumping the bottom, right? And then every time on that swing, when that fly starts to come up, as if it's a fish coming to the surface, right? Like a wounded fish, that's when the bull trout are eating it. So the spay presentation was perfect for what we were doing.
It worked so well. And it came to light as the next couple of days went on, because I eventually convinced Scotty to grab a spay rod and make a little bit of a switch there at the end. But it was just such an effective way for especially some of these long, like, inside bends where you have a really consistent current and you can just swing. And I don't know, there's just something beautiful about it. It's just such an enjoyable way to fish, and just stand there and you're just like anticipating that take. And when you have your line swinging out and you have that really good belly in your line, you have a really good feel for what's on the end of your line. You can feel that fly in the current. And even the slightest bump, like, you can feel it when the fish
You just feel it in your stomach. You're like, oh, it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Because they'll hit, like, some of these fish will hit it a couple times before they actually take the fly. So, like, you kind of know when you're in the zone. You're like, okay, there's a fish. And you make another cast. You're like, okay, this could be it. And then, boom, there it is. It takes another swing at it, and it's game on. And, like, having that really good feel for your fly just makes it such an electric take. When even though it's not visual in a lot of ways, it can be visual, but my favorite forms of fly fishing have always been the visual take. You know, the dry fly take. You know, you're on the saltwater flats, you see like that permit or that bonefish eat your fly, and you set the hook. But a lot of times with spay fishing, it's not as visual. You have to imagine it.
It's like a feel.
It's a feel, but it's almost as fun just getting the take. Like, even though it's not visual like other ways of fly fishing, it's just as exciting as a visual take, because it's so powerful when you're already tight to that fly swinging. You already have that really good feel for the fly, and then it eats it, and you just it's electric. It's just an addicting feeling. And now I just want to, like, spay fish forever.
Yeah. Dude, I felt like it was like not like an eye-opening experience, but it was you were just like so stoked about spay fishing. You know, you had after the first day of fishing, you're like, I need to do this more. And like, this is the place to do it.
It is. It's something about it. It's just really a really fun form of fly fishing, and it's all about the take and the cast, and you're effectively covering water, and you know that you're covering the water too, which is also cool. And I don't know, just using that two-handed rod, it's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember you were like, hey, do you want to try it? And I was like, yeah, I'll do it in a little bit. And I kept being stubborn about it. I tried it the first day for a little bit, and I just was like, yeah, this isn't for me.
Yeah, you're being stubborn.
I was being really stubborn, especially having some success in that one-handed rod. I was like, yeah, I'm good. But so we ended up going through the day. The rest of the day, you just kept fishing the spay rod. Mm-hmm. I fished the single-hander. And all the fish that I caught that day were all on the strip. Like, it was all kind of a swing, but I was stripping it back as when they ate it. And all the fish you caught, just for the most part, was on that swing.
Swing, yeah.
And so I found like the different holes that we were fishing, one was more effective than the other. Like the pocket water stuff where I could strip it through was really effective for the 8-weight.
Yep.
And then all the big, long, sweeping holes with the big tail outs, that's when you were getting most of your eats.
That's very true. There's some pockets that were very fishy that we were walking along, and I tried to fish them with the spay, and it's hard because you can't really trout set with the spay rod. You have to either get them on the swing or strip set it. It's really hard to like trout set because the rod's pretty long and soft. So when you try and trout set, you don't really get much leverage on that hook. But in some of those pockets, like say that fish eats it right at your feet, you can get an effective strip set and trout set with that shorter rod that you wouldn't get with the spay. And that makes a huge difference for those little pockets where you kind of want that shorter rod to be able to control your fly effectively and fish it effectively, because you can't really spay cast a pocket. You know.
Well, we found out. You kind of can.
You kind of can. Yeah, we happened into one particular fish that was in some pocket water, and it was really just luck. I mean, it's hard to catch fish doing I was just saying how it's really not effective in fishing pocket water, but I did catch one in a pocket, and I was just walking downstream, and my fly was just dangling in the water. I wasn't even fishing it. It was just dangling, and I had just left it in the water. I was walking downstream with, just holding my rod out, and then I was lifting up the fly to make another cast, and of course I trout setted a fish on accident, and it was one of the bigger fish of the trip too, just right on the bank, which was super cool. It was in super shallow water, right on the bank in like a pocket water riffly zone that I wouldn't really expect a fish to really be in.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason I was fishing is like, all right, is the very top of the run. Might as well start here and work my way down instead of going straight to the juicy water. And we very easily could have overlooked that water with that fish in it and just walked right by it, and that's what I was doing essentially. And then it just ate the fly.
And it's so funny on the video because I remember looking and you're like you first hooked it and you thought it was like a log or something, so you put your rod back down and you walk forward, as if it's like stuck on a log, and then you lift again. Oh my god, it's a fish! And then it starts fighting. That was a sick eat. But yeah, I think that first day, dude, the silty water and everything, man, the fish were sitting so close to the bank.
They were all tight to the bank. It was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I got them on the swing, they're eating at the very end of the swing, so it makes me think that they're at the very on the bank, and that fly would just swing out from the run, and then eventually get close enough to the bank, then that's when they'd grab it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was cool. That was very different conditions than what we had the next day, and I think that might have affected the fishing a little bit because that water was silty and a little bit higher. We checked no, I wouldn't say it's not the USGS, the Canada gauging.
Yeah, we just checked the flows of like what the river was doing.
Yeah, we checked the flows, and it had changed drastically. And by the end of the day, it went from being a brown color to like a bright blue, whitish, glacial kind of color. Mm-hmm. And the fishing definitely dropped off because we went and fished some really good water. And at the beginning of our second session on that first day, I caught another nice fish right off the bat. Scotty got a big eat from another fish, and we didn't really catch much after that. As soon as the water kind of dropped and the color changed, it threw things off without a doubt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When we walked up to the river and from afar, we had that top down angle because we had to hike all the way down there. We're like, damn, this is a new river today, and so we just had to. I don't know. We had to fish it and fish it a little differently, and I don't know, just take a little more time, I guess. Mm-hmm. But eventually we started running into fish. I know usually those bull trout feed pretty heavily in the morning, and then it kind of drops off in the afternoon. Yeah. But I felt like that second day, or that I guess is our third day here, was when towards the afternoon is when stuff really started happening. Yeah. Especially for you.
Yeah, that third day in the afternoon, man. It wasn't the craziest day of fishing when we started off. We fished some good holes that had a lot of hydraulic flow to them. They were like really not consistent, and they looked really good from afar, but we got up to it and there's just kind of like whirlpools, and it's hard to effectively fish a fly in that kind of water because you're not getting it down deep enough. The currents are trying to carry your line everywhere and bring your fly up and down in the current. And we got one fish kind of in the tail out of a run. I think it was Scotty's fish, but he couldn't really get his fly down to it or something. I was fishing the spay. Maybe that was just a spay spot. And it was right in front of you. I was like, I kind of snuck down on top of you and just like swung right in front of where you were fishing, and then got.
Well, I had fished it, right? Like I had fished it thoroughly.
Yeah.
But it just, again, it wasn't like I wasn't getting down, I guess.
Dude, that happened twice that day though. You were fishing a spot and I came in behind you and caught fish. And I think it kind of came down to the setups we were using. Mm-hmm. You're fishing the single hand, I was fishing the spay, and fishing the spay behind you with the swing. I hooked fish, and then with the single hand rod, those fish didn't eat your fly for whatever reason. So I think it came down to like our difference in techniques. Like maybe the spay is more effective in a lot of situations, because you would fish an entire run or an entire spot, and I would just come in just to see if anything's still home. And then that happened again later that day. We were fishing a really beautiful spot. I would say like probably the most beautiful spot of the entire trip. Yeah, like really sick. Had kind of this a shelf drop off, and as the shelf dropped off, it formed a channel along that far bank, and there's a soft spot there, and I think that's where the fish were sitting. It's right below that drop off in that little channel. It's just like a perfect spot for an ambush point. And we were swinging our flies off the drop off or from that shelf into that slower water, and right as they drop from that riffle drop off into that little channel where it gets deeper, that's where the fish were sitting. And you'd fish it thoroughly. I was flying the drone for half an hour, and we were trying to get an hookup shot, and nothing. And we're like, all right, well, I guess we're done here because it turned into a canyon and we couldn't really go much further downstream. And we were about to wrap it up, and I was like, I'll make a few swings through here too with the spade just to see if anything bites. And
Yeah, we weren't even filming. I just was like, happened to have my GoPro recording.
Yeah, you
And
just happened to have it
I was walking
recording.
upstream to come meet up with you.
Yeah, that was crazy that you even captured this shot, and I'm really excited you did because I wasn't running my GoPro. I was just kind of fun fishing at that point. I just wanted to cast the spey rod and just see if anything else was home. And lo and behold, got a big eat on the swing, and this one was like in the middle of the run too. This was probably my favorite eat of the whole trip because it was like perfectly in the middle of the swing. Super big eat, went tight immediately. Didn't have to set the hook, just like immediate, just like kind of feeling. It was electric, and the water was also a little bit more clear at that point, so it was just super pretty and had that big wall behind us. It was just really like probably one of the coolest moments of the trip for me.
And it was clear as day too, so we could see him fighting the whole time.
Sun was out. Oh, it was a good moment.
Yeah.
And especially after not catching much that day, like that kind of like turned things around. We're like, oh wait, maybe the fishing is still good. And yeah, we got that one to the net and got a couple of cool shots of it and released it. And we were planning on putting the spey rods away at that point and just doing some cutthroat fishing. And I was like, wait a sec.
I was like, you know what? Well, let me try out the spey rod again.
Yeah.
Which was really good because I think I needed to just like spend some time with the spey rod and really get the cast, down, and it was a good run to do it. And stepped up a little below where you fished, and swung it through a couple times. And I'm sure, after looking back, my cast or whatever, it was not pretty by any means. It was no April Vokey cast, but it was really cool to at least kind of do the thing or whatever, run through the motions.
You gotta start somewhere, man. And
Yeah.
honestly, from my perspective, your cast is really natural. Like it didn't take you long to get your fly in the zone.
Yeah.
And you're definitely fishing it effectively. And I think if you spend some time doing it, and next trip maybe, I would recommend just committing to it because
Yeah.
you got to bite the bullet and stick with it. You got to stick it out. When you're learning anything new, there's going to be a learning curve. You're not going to be succeeding at first, and you just got to accept that.
Yeah.
But you're investing in your later times when you're actually going to be fishing well. You got to just start out getting your butt kicked, and then eventually, once you put in your time and pay your dues, it'll happen.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely out of my comfort zone, and I think that's why I was so hesitant to it at first, because I just wanted to stick with the 8-weight. I knew how to fish that. But it was clearly the superior method for where we were fishing, And lo and behold, after fishing that run a couple times, hooked up on one, and that was so cool. Same kind of situation as yours, like a little swift water, but like right at that drop off where it is a good ambush point. And man, I remember it swinging through, and it was like doo doo doo, and just like on, and I didn't even have to set the hook, and just. Maybe I should have set the hook a little harder because I hooked it, and then it popped off after about 10 seconds.
Yep.
But it was at least cool to get the feeling down and feel that bow. And I felt like that cast was like my first one where I felt really good. Like, okay, I have a good rollout, and it's really bowing and swinging how I want it to. And, dude, it was addicting. Like that anticipation of waiting and watching that line swing, and then when you can feel the fly kind of bouncing on the rocks is a really cool thing, because at that point you're like, it's about to happen.
You're in the zone.
Yeah.
And I knew it too. When I was filming you, I even said, you can hear it in the audio, like, yeah, that was the cast. And then like less than 2 seconds later, you're hooked up.
Yeah.
So yeah, dude, that's what it's all about. That's why fishing is so fun, is because there's a lot of moments where you're not killing it and not doing great, but the stars just align sometimes, and you get that perfect cast, you get that perfect swing, and the fish happen to be there, and they happen to see your fly. You just got to pay your dues, and the stars will align, and things will happen.
Yep, definitely. If you guys are wondering, yeah, it's out. It's okay. If you're wondering why I'm drinking out of a camp bowl, it's because we forgot our second mug. So this is back to the bike pack tendencies or tactics. Yeah. So after that third day, I feel like from then on it kind of just shut off a little bit. You stuck a couple fish in the afternoon at the last spot.
It was definitely slower.
Yeah. Yeah, it was slow. And I think that last section too was tough with a lot of the hydraulics that we were running into. It just really threw off your swing, and like it's pushing so much water up that it like just throws your line essentially up in the water, which is totally throws off what the swing's trying to do.
Yeah, that braided section it would be like an eddy on the inside of the bend and then really swift deep current on the outside. And that's not the best swing water because then your line gets a bow in it and your fly is way downstream of your running line. And when you get an eat, you don't have that tight connection to it. You want that belly in your fly line, and it's the opposite when it's like that, and it just makes it really hard to fish it. And that's when you really want the single hand rod and just strip it deep sort of thing. But not the best water for spay fishing. And I think we were also closer to the main stem of the river that these fish run up because bull trout are migratory fish, which is another reason I think swinging flies is effective for them. And those fish are probably further upstream. And it seemed to be that way when we were fishing those further upstream spots. That's where we were running into more fish.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a cool element of bull trout and why they're so addicting is because they are migratory, and they're migratory from lakes, not from the ocean. But they it's such a small window of when you can really target them when they're in the right water, and so when they're there and you can find them, it's like this magic moment. Unfortunately, we were kind of there in a good time, but what I'm curious too, because we both have been back and forth like, man, like they're just so fun to catch. Like, what are your thoughts on bull trout and like why they're so addicting?
Yeah, I mean, bull trout are a species that's probably on a lot of people's radar, but in the lower 48, we can't fish for them, mainly because they're a threatened species. They're very vulnerable and susceptible to what humans are doing and building roads and houses and developing the land. And when silt enters a watershed, it affects the bull trout because they need really clean, cold water to survive. And us as people have had a huge effect on their declining populations in the lower 48. So it's not very encouraged in my mind to fish for them. Even there are places where it's acceptable and it's legal and it's totally okay to fish for them, but there are also places where you really shouldn't fish for them. And you have to respect your local laws and regulations because these fish really are sensitive. They're very sensitive to handling. They're sensitive to being held out of the water. They're just sensitive fish. They're native, and they've been here for way longer than we have, and we just have to respect them as a species. So when I fish for bull trout, it's a very special, almost like a ritual in my mind, because it's not something I'm going to do all the time, because I don't need to go whale on a bunch of native fish that are threatened. And I don't feel the need to do so, but that's what makes it special, actually doing it and playing with these fish, because when you hold one and you look at it, you know that it's been through a lot, and it's been through a long journey to get to where you're at. It's survived a long time and remained a native species in its watershed for a long time. And they are a very special fish. But in Canada, the populations are very strong here. As you go further north, there's a lot of different bull trout fisheries, and that's why we're allowed to fish for them here, and it's totally okay. And it's not frowned upon like it is in other places of the world. But you still have to respect these fish. They are very, very susceptible to handling. We always keep them wet. No hero shots holding them out of the water. I like to always keep the fish in the water and release it as quickly as possible. Don't handle it for very long. Land the fish, put it in the net, take the hook out, and then maybe on the release just gets a couple in the water shots and then let it go and make sure it swims off.
Mm-hmm.
Very strong. Barbless hooks, single hook kind of deal. And they need to be respected. And anyone who wants to come do this sort of thing, you have to be aware that these fish are very, very special. They are not they are going to eat your fly more often than other species of fish like brown trout that might not be as willing to take a fly as a bull trout. They're very willing to take a fly, which makes them more susceptible to being messed with by people and mishandling, because they're very aggressive. That you guys have seen the flies we're throwing. They're going to eat that. They'll eat that huge thing.
Yeah. And they won't just eat it. They're like going in for the kill.
Yeah.
They're inhaling that thing.
They're going for the kill for sure. I'm getting smoked out over here.
Yeah, I know. I think kind of like you were saying, what makes them so special, especially up here, is the places you get to fish for them. And they are these kind of remote, super pristine rivers that are not impacted by humans. And I think it's a special thing to have that like connection almost with like the past and with these native fish that have been here forever.
Exactly.
And we're not going to be fishing for bull trout every single day. And I think it's like you go and do it enough to where it's like, that was a really cool moment, and I got to share that with those fish and get to like really experience it, and then come out the other end like way more appreciative of the fish and way more apt to wanting to preserve them and do like, especially through like the filmmaking. I think you and I both have an opportunity to share this stuff with people, because it's not like we're just going up here to catch this super predatory fish that's just fun to catch. Like there's so much more to it.
Yeah.
Than just catching a big predatory fish.
There
and
is.
I think I hope the films kind of show that, and that's kind of the why, I would say. More so for me, it's just the full experience of like being up here and seeing these places and knowing what is still intact and what we need to protect,
Mm-hmm.
and like taking that back into the States and some of our rivers there, and just having that mindset of like, these places are really important and these fish are really fragile, so let's do a good job taking care of them.
Exactly.
No matter where you go.
No matter where you go, it's important to make sure that you're taking the proper steps with regulations, and also like ultimately when you're fishing these rivers, no one's watching you over your shoulder the whole time. You have to have your own integrity and make sure that you're doing things that if, say, a fisheries biologist was watching you, that you'd be okay with them watching you do it. Like, just pretend there's always someone watching, because there's not always someone watching, and it's really up to your own personal choices as an angler. Like, am I doing this the right way? Is this how I should be handling the fish? Is this how I should be fishing? Am I being respectful? Am I being a steward to my environment? And ultimately, yeah, like you're saying, filmmaking is a way to promote being a steward and share with others how we should properly go about experiencing these fisheries and taking care of our landscapes and keeping these places amazing, so that we can continue to experience them for years to come and hopefully improve them. Because you hear a lot of stories, like Pat and Josh, who we met yesterday, like they've been fishing here for 30 years. 30 years ago, this was a different fishery. It looked a lot different. There were more fish, according to them. And you hear that same story all over the world, what it was like 30 years ago, what it was like 50 years ago. Now it's just gone to shit. You hear that about everything. And there's a lot of negativity around that. And I think there is potential in turning it around and protecting these places, and also, taking proper steps to make the returns of fish even better. Like in the lower 48, these bull trout are on the decline, and what we really need to do is figure out how to make them be growing in population instead of declining in population. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how we can do that. I don't know if it's even possible, but that should be our goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the over the shoulder thing you're talking about is really key. Like having some integrity, and because sometimes you just don't know. Like sometimes people are just, I want to catch this fish because I saw someone on YouTube catch this big fish. Like that looks sick. I need to catch a big fish. But I think in like the process, for us going out and targeting these fish and catching them, you come away with so much more appreciation, or just you're just more aware. Mm-hmm. You're more aware of like what's going on. You're more aware of the impact that we have, and so it's like it's a double-edged sword, right? It's like we're definitely not doing any good targeting these fish, but at the same time, it's fishermen who are going to be the ones who are actually making steps to take care of them. Because if
agree.
I was just a normal dude and I didn't fish or anything like that, I would care zero about bull trout because I just have no idea.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
So
Yeah, that's crazy because the only reason we're so aware of it is because we fish. And we would have no idea what's going on unless we were out here fishing for them. So it is a double-edged sword in that sense, because I do feel guilt to some degree fishing for bull trout. There is part of me that's like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. It feels a little dirty almost because I know they're a very fragile fish and their populations aren't necessarily growing throughout the world. And that part of me makes me a little sad, understanding that. But the joy of doing it and the excitement and the experience for me, it outweighs that feeling sometimes, which is why I end up fishing.
yeah, and I think on like the macro scale, like we're looking at a very micro scale of us our interactions with like a couple bull trout. But if you look at more of the macro of like what humans have done in terms of the silt or polluting rivers or dams being put in, like there's so many bigger factors that are out of our control that I've realized that I don't feel as guilty fishing from. It's like if I were fishing for these every single day, I'd be like, dude, what? Like, you've some guilt. Like I totally know what you mean.
For sure.
But I think like on the macro scale, there's just more factors that are out of our control. But being aware of them is a huge takeaway from this trip.
And you can apply this to any fishery, not just bull trout. All fish are susceptible to people messing with them and mishandling them. It doesn't matter what fish it is. Bull trout are just kind of more on the under the microscope because they are such a threatened species. But you think about any fish or fishery, the biggest threats to them aren't necessarily fishermen. It's the people that control the watershed. It's the mines. It's the logging operations. It's the developments. It's all those factors way outweigh the small little experiences we have fishing and handling them, and that's really the biggest takeaway. And I think that's the biggest impact we can have on our fisheries in a positive way is getting together as anglers and protecting them and preventing things from affecting the watershed. That is the most important versus maybe mishandling a couple fish here and there.
Yeah, I mean, we even saw in our Prairie Hopper series in the river we were fishing just how much those farm irrigation canals, how much water that was taking away from certain parts of the river.
It's
like
insane.
It's like those kinds of things. You're like, oh my gosh, that is making a huge impact on the fishery.
Yes.
Those
are the things that we need to worry about, not necessarily fishing for them or handling the fish. It's the big kind of stuff that you don't think about sometimes that really has the biggest impact.
Yeah, for sure. I mean that's good stuff. I think for everyone listening, like it's definitely good stuff to be aware of. And like if you guys are going to target for bull trout or going out to target for bull trout, have a blast doing it. Follow the regulations. Be aware. Talk to your fly shops. Just be aware, and handle the fish with care. I think that's a huge thing to make sure you're keeping them in the water. Use barbless hooks like we were doing, so they just pop out and boom, let them go. They are an incredible species and really fun to target, but you just got to be careful,
Tread lightly.
Yeah. But going back into kind of our trip here, we finished off at that river and we decided let's cross the border and head over to Alberta.
Yeah.
And check out some new creeks.
The Texas of Canada.
The Texas of Canada, dude. Let's go. It's so good. We met these guys Pat and Josh on the river here. Legends. Just gonna say that. They were just like parked in the middle of this Forest Service road, fixing their cars, something.
Yeah, they were just like, I think they were packing up camp and just wrapping up fishing, and yeah, we just had a conversation, and they recognized Scotty right off the bat, and we got into a little wildfly talk, and it was cool learning about this area from a local perspective, people that have grown up here. It's easy to not get that perspective when you're traveling and doing things on your own, like DIY style, like we're doing. It's especially out here where there's not many people around. You kind of get in your own little world. So it's cool to meet some local folks and get their perspective a little bit.
Yeah, I just love bumping into good people on the river. Those guys are great, just super genuine, like stoked to be out here. they're probably what in their 50s or something, just getting after it.
Getting after it.
Gosh, dude, such
So
good
cool.
dudes.
It's cool to see.
Yeah, so we got in here again. We rolled in at night, so we didn't really. You've been here, but I hadn't seen it.
You hadn't seen
So
it.
like waking up, I mean, you guys can kind of see it behind us. This epic valley, and where we're at, there's a river right here, which is down in the canyon, and then there's also a river behind the camera, and they both there's a big confluence down there where they meet, and that yeah, we that was kind of our plan originally. Was you fished or kind of around here before, so we had an idea, but we kind of opted for something a little different when we saw the river.
We were trying to get to this first fishing spot, and we never made it there because we just took one look at the river, and Scotty was like, all right, we're going to fish that.
Which ended up being sick, dude. We didn't catch one in that first hole, but we worked up the stream a little ways, and I think it was nice. We got our bull trout fishing in the last couple days, and I felt like we were like, you know what, let's have a cutthroat day. Let's pull out the 5 weights, throw in some dries, and let's just do some small creek fishing for cutthroat, you know?
Epic.
And of course, like pretty soon after getting out there, man, it just started. They started hammering,
It was
man.
on. There were tons of bugs. I mean, all the mayflies were hatching, and golden stones, and caddis. It was on. It's
And
prime
drakes?
time. And drakes, big drakes were on the water. We're throwing big dries, little dries. We were throwing all the dries. It was so sick.
But the one dry in particular that was slaying was the Parachute Adams, the good old purple haze.
Best fly ever.
Yeah. Yeah, that was so fun, man. That last day of fishing just felt like a great way to wrap things up, and just low stakes. Just felt like we got our good fishing out of the way, and we just could kind of let loose. And we brought one rod and camera. We just kind of switched off back and forth, and that was just like a fun, really fun day of fishing. Fishing these little Parachute Adams, and fish just coming up. Big fish, by the way.
Big cuts.
Big cuts. We love it.
So much fun. I love playing baseball and just like bringing one rod with your bro and taking turns, and one person can watch and take pictures or whatever. Like I was just using the camera, and then on small water, it's a really good way to do it, because when you have 2 rods out on really small water, sometimes you end up just flogging it, and one person walks in front of the other, and you play leapfrog, and then this fish gets spooked, and then it's more fun to experience it together too, with one person watching, and then you get to see the cool eats that happen. And yeah, that was epic. That was one of the best cutthroat fishing sessions I've probably ever had, without doubt.
Same. Couldn't believe the size of fish that were consistently coming up and eating.
Consistent. They didn't care we were there either. We just stood there and pulled fish after fish out of the same spot. It's like, what are they doing? They just don't care right now.
Yeah. Dude. Oh, magical day. Trying to think where we should go from here.
Anything else on your list that we haven't touched on? I feel like we've covered a lot of bases.
We have covered a lot. Here we go. Yeah, I think I guess any kind of closing thoughts on that last day that we had of fishing, and just the trip in general overall?
Yeah, that last day, the second part of the day, it kind of slowed down a little bit. The fishing was winding down, and I started to kind of feel this emotions of going back to reality, and knowing that once we get back to the van, I'm probably going to have to break down my rod and pack it away. And that feeling is always bittersweet, because at this point in the trip, I'm ready to be done for a few days. Take a little break off from fishing, and go download all my memory cards and sit in front of the computer and just review this awesome footage we've got. And yeah, there comes a time on every fishing trip where it's time to go home, and you kind of just reflect on everything that's happened and process it. And this trip in particular was a very special trip. I haven't been on a trip this good to Canada before. Like, I've been up here a few times. I don't live far away from here, but I think, coming out here during this time of year and just going at it with just such a clear mind and not having a plan, just made it such an enjoyable trip. Really took the pressure off, and it was a great recharge before going back to the real world and having to, do the dishes and mow the lawn and make sure that everything is good on the home front, and I look forward to it. It's always good to look forward to going back to the real world after a fishing trip, because sometimes I don't look forward to it, and it's tough to leave. But I think this time around I feel very satisfied with our experiences, and I don't really need much more to be happy, and it's time.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think coming into it too, our expectations and like the pressure a lot of times that we put on ourselves before these trips can sometimes like ruin the vibe. If you go in with like, we have to catch a huge bull trout to make this film, or we have to get this shot, or like whatever it is. I think we came in with a really good mindset of, let's just go see what happens.
Yeah.
Let's like low stakes. Let's capture this, everything, but let's not do too intensely. Because I think you and I both, like in the past, we just film everything, and it's still something that we are working on.
We still are working on.
But I feel like we've come a long ways with knowing the moments that we can pull the camera out, and knowing the moments when it's like right to put the camera away, and we don't need to capture that. And so I felt like there was a lot better balance on this trip of the filming and fishing, even though it is a grind the whole time. Like, we're working, like this is hard work. We're hiking. We probably hiked 5 miles a day with a lot of vert. And I know like on my watch that one day it said like 28,000 steps, which I don't know what that equates to, but that's
a lot.
A lot. And yeah, I think it's fun when we get together and we get to fish and film, and we get to kind of push each other. We both have our strengths and weaknesses, and I think we like play well with that on these trips. And there's certain times when like you can carry the weight for certain things, like pull out the long lens.
Yeah,
you're superior at the long lens, like getting those crispy eat shots, and like that's you're so pro at that. So like letting you be in your zone there, in other moments than I can like film or do whatever when you want to focus on fishing. But yeah, I always just love that. Like, there's one thing to go fishing, but then to have like a bud who also gets camera stuff and gets like the whole YouTube thing and has the passion for telling these stories is really exciting. So I was looking forward to this big time, and it was like everything I had hoped and dreamed of.
Yeah, that's well said. We're a strong team when we get together, and anytime we get together to fish, I look forward to it no matter what.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always, whether it's like, no matter how the trip goes, there's always going to be an interesting outcome.
Yeah.
Whether it's good or whether it's bad, it's like, I don't want to say it yet, but no one's gotten sick this trip, which is good.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
We
dude.
almost always get sick.
That's so true.
Someone always gets sick.
Yeah. Last time you got COVID, and the time before I had
a
stomach bug. Like a stomach bug.
Yeah, it turned out pretty good. I'm very excited with this trip in particular, and we have a few more trips coming up this summer. So stay tuned for what we have in store. This is only the beginning.
Only the beginning. We've got a lot of exciting things to come. And we have to wrap this thing up because, unfortunately, I've got to fly home. And we got to get our asses back to the U.S. so I can get to the airport.
Yeah.
So, yeah, dude, epic trip. Really, really fun to come up here. I'm looking forward to the next one. And I'm excited to see what you put together for your film.
Back at you, dude. I can't wait to start digging into all our awesome footage, and I look forward to doing this again sometime, man. I know you're not going to be able to stay away from here for very long.
Right?
You'll be back. And just, when you do, just give me a call. I'll pretty much drop whatever I'm doing to come back to Canada.
Yes, dude. Sweet. Well, guys, go make sure you go subscribe to Will on YouTube and Phelps on the Fly, and you'll be able to see this film. I'm sure by this point when the podcast is out, this will be released, and lots of other exciting van videos that are to come. I'm excited to see the van adventures.
Lots to come.
Will's about to pop off on the YouTube game. I can tell. So you guys go support him and follow along with it.
Appreciate that, Scotty.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys listening. We hope you kind of enjoyed this BTS look into the trip, and we'll see y'all next time.
Appreciate it. Thanks for watching, guys.
Peace.